Happy New Year! Well, it's actually not New Year yet by when I'm making this video. It will be by the time the video comes out. We are at the end of the fall 2024 season, and I gotta say, there's actually a decent amount of good shows for this season. Unfortunately, with the holidays and everything, I didn't really get to get in as many shows as I would have liked to. I say that, but that's partially a lie. I definitely wasted far too much time in games like Elite Dangerous. But that's a side subject. Anyway, with it being the end of the season, I'm going to talk about the shows that I did watch. And I'm going to do like I did last time. I'm going to show the shows that I'm going to talk about and the timestamps just so it's a little easier to find and see if I'm actually going to talk about anything that you're interested in. So, minor spoilers for these. Well, I'm not going to talk about spoilers for most of these. I'm definitely going to talk a lot of spoilers for ReZero, just fair warning. Anyway, let's get to it. Tower of God Season 2 Workshop Battle. Okay, so technically, this isn't done yet, but I've seen enough that I've already kind of formed my opinion. And I said the last season, literally in the last season, that I was waiting for something to happen, basically, to get me excited about this show. And I think at this point, I'm just done. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about the manhwa animes that have just not been hitting for me. I am planning on watching the next season of Solo Leveling, and this doesn't really give me good hopes for that. I mean, I already didn't like the first season. Actually, let's talk about this for a second. Not that show, but just the manhwas in general. Because I really need someone to come in here and try to explain this to me. Because there's been so much hype. Every time a new anime that is taking the source from a manhwa, there's so much hype for it. But then as soon as the show comes out and as soon as I watch one or two seasons, I just don't enjoy them. I don't know if it's poor adaptations or if I am just actually not a fan of manhwas, and if I went to go read them, I wouldn't enjoy them. But it's hard to say since I haven't. For this show specifically, I was watching it more because of the first season. The first season felt like they were setting up a good story. So when the second season started and they just went off and started a new story, basically, I started to lose interest. And then whatever this, I don't know, what is this, a part of the second season, whatever this workshop battle is, I was really hoping that something would happen. And I don't feel like it's possible that they've cut some content that's messing up the story for me, but I don't think they've. I think that I understand the story enough that that is not the issue. I just don't think there's anything there that is interesting. There's no other way for me to put that. And this was supposed to be, I thought they were setting up like a fighting tournament arc kind of thing, but the fights were terrible. Like I nothing about the fights were interesting. So it wasn't fun to watch. It wasn't interesting to see the story play out because I really didn't care. So yeah, I think I'm just kind of done with this show altogether. And we'll hope that Solo Leveling has done something for the next season that I will be interested in. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I'm not gonna do that. I'm actually not gonna talk a whole lot about this show. It was absolutely amazing, and everybody knows it. So I'm not really sure what else I'm going to add, but I know that I saw this everywhere as soon as it came out. And for good reason. I think that they did really well in a lot of different areas. And honestly, when I was watching this, I kind of got the same feelings that I got the first time that I watched Fooly Cooly, where I had no idea what the fuck was going on, but I was there for it. The chaos and the quirkiness did really well to set up the story and get you hooked into what was going to happen. And of course, they've got great music, just like Fooly Cooly, which Fooly Cooly had the vibe pretty much throughout the entire like episode, whereas I felt like the music for this was more concentrated on the outro and the intro, but both of those were amazing. Not just because I know everybody was talking about the intro with Creepy Nuts, which was great, but I also actually enjoyed the outro too. The story itself is really interesting, and I think it lends itself well to being both fun and stupid for comedy and stuff, while also being able to easily switch to serious and action packed. And the characters that they've been introducing are just fun to watch, especially the main two protagonists. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how their relationship develops and how their overall story plays out. I said I wasn't going to talk a whole lot about the show, so I'm going to go ahead and just stop it here. Yes, this was a great show. I look forward to next season. I know it's already been announced, so I'm pretty excited about that. Mecha-uda. This is a good 6 or 7 out of 10. Slightly above mid, basically. And let me talk about the bad parts first. So, the only real issue that I have is the story. It's okay. I don't think it's terrible, but I also don't think it's anything special. Mixed in with that, it gets more predictable as the story goes on. So, and I don't think being predictable is necessarily a bad thing on its own, but it kind of needs to have a good story in order to make up for that. I think having the story just be okay and having it be extremely predictable definitely takes away from the overall feel of the show. On the flip side of that, I do think there are a couple of things that it does really well. On the story side, it ends with this one season. Like there shouldn't be any more. It pretty much wraps everything up, which is I think something that a lot of shows struggle with, especially with just one season. I think this is like 12 episodes. It manages to tell the whole story that it wants to tell in just the one season, and it wraps everything up. I mean, part of that probably could be contributed to the overall story not being all that great or in depth or anything, but still, I am glad that they were able to get everything in and said and done with. Another positive is the fights. So, overall, the fights are good, but not great. Like, they're definitely better than some of the fights that I've seen this season, especially from Tower of God. But anyway, we're not just talking about that at the moment. But the fights are okay, but there's not anything over the top except for a few spots. It'd be a few seconds for each fight where they just go super over the top, and you can definitely tell where a lot of the budget went. But one thing that I think that they do really well that I don't, for some reason, I don't see it in other shows as much, is that few seconds where they have that Sasuga moment and it goes super hard. That's where I've seen most of the clips from this show, or those few little moments in the fights. The rest of the fight doesn't look bad or anything. Like it definitely, you can definitely tell that those moments are where a lot of the time and effort went into. But the rest of the fight still looks good, and I think that's something that I have learned to appreciate with the after watching a lot of other shows is having that transition or that blend, having the entire fight be entertaining, even if you don't have the budget to make the entire fight be super amazing or over the top, kind of like Demon Slayer does, where they have the entire thing is just super high budget. And I'm not saying this is the only show that does this. I think this is just one of the few shows that does it really well. It is able to take the smaller budget, which I would assume it has, and make the action look good throughout the entire fight and not just for that few the few 2 seconds during each episode. So I do want to give it props on that. And I think with the positives, it kind of outweighs the negatives, but not by enough to make this an like absolutely amazing show. Like I said, I still think this is just slightly above mid, which still means I enjoyed watching it. Unfortunately, I just see this being one of those shows that gets forgotten here in a few seasons, even by me, even though I do think it's a decent show. Bleach, Thousand Year Blood War Arc Part 3. I'm always glad to get more Bleach. There's more fights and some backstory that kind of help wrap up the overall story because I think this is the next to last part. I think there's only one more part after this. And overall, I enjoyed this season, but I didn't really enjoy it as much as I did the previous parts for one big reason. One problem that I've always had with Bleach is that a lot of the victories have kind of felt pulled out of Kubo's ass. It's not every fight, and it's not even that bad most of the time. You can definitely tell when someone should have lost and they didn't because of story reasons. But this part felt like that happened a lot. Like a lot of the fights felt like should have been one-sided or should have ended one way, and then a fucking Deus Ex Machina pulls out of nowhere to win the fight. And again, I don't think all the fights are bad or anything. I just think that it diminishes the victories just a little bit, enough that I would put this part below the other parts. So I'm hoping that the last part doesn't have as many of these random ass, oh, here's a sword that is specifically made to beat this one enemy that you didn't know about until right now. That kind of shit, I think. I am really hoping is not part of the last part. But anyway, I still enjoyed it and it's still worth watching. I mean, I'd imagine most people who have watched the previous parts are going to be watching this part too. Orb on the movements of the earth. This is only about halfway through, but I still want to talk about it because I think this is a top tier example of storytelling. So, in case you don't know what this anime is about, they are basically trying to prove heliocentrism, which doesn't sound like it would be that interesting to watch, but I think it does such an amazing job of getting you invested into the main characters. And I say main characters because there are multiple throughout the season. There are probably going to be a few more before the season is even done. And I think that works really well with the overall theme because the overall theme is trying to prove this idea, but the church is all about geocentrism and will kill anyone who has differing opinions on that, which I think somewhat mimics our own history about how this idea came about. But I'll admit I know very little about the history surrounding this. So this could all be complete bullshit. But it doesn't matter. I'm not watching this for history. I'm watching this more for the story. So anyway, back to what I was saying. There are multiple protagonists throughout the entire story because this is a story that spans the ages. It expands through, I don't even know how long the time span is on this, but it's not just one person doing it. It is a culmination of lots of people doing work on this one thing. And through each protagonist that comes in, the story makes them enjoyable to watch. You want to, they pulls you in to learn more about the person and more about the work that they're doing. So I guess it's really just a story about people pursuing truth in a society that does not want them to. And the storytelling is absolutely amazing, and I want more people to watch this show, so go watch it. ReZero Season 3. You know I gotta talk about this. And I'm probably gonna end up moving this part to the end of the video because this is just gonna be a whole bunch of spoilers. Now, I'm probably gonna end up repeating a lot of this whenever I do my review of this season, but hopefully it will be a little more coherent then. So season 3 covers arc 5 of the story, and this is my favorite arc. So I'm pretty excited for everyone else to experience this. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this arc is the growth that both Subaru and Emilia have. Subaru dies, what, twice? And he is able to recover quickly, for one, and two, come up with a plan to deal with the Sin Archbishop problem that he was having. It's amazing how much he is able to do in this first part with so few deaths, especially considering in the past arcs. I actually think this is the, overall, this is the arc with the least amount of deaths. So always great to see. And Emilia actually goes 1v1 with Wrath, which I was excited to see. I'm glad that they did that well because I something that I've had a problem with in the past with the anime is how they have handled her fighting. Because in the light novels, well, in the light novel and the web novel, they she is more. I've said this before, and I forget how I put it. She's more balanced when it comes to magic and hand to hand fighting. So whenever this season comes and they introduce, oh, she has a new style of fighting where she can make her weapons unlimited blade work style. It makes sense. Like it's just a progression of how she fought before and how she is fighting now. Like there was no weird transition where I felt like with the anime it's a bit of a jump. It's not that much that it's a huge issue. It just feels weird that she goes from standing back and casting magic most of the time to where now she's jumping in and trying to melee people. Again, it's not a huge issue. It's probably more an issue for me than it is for anyone else. But whenever she gets captured, normally she is useless. And this time she's actually come up with a plan. She's going to try to. She knows Subaru is going to come help her or do something, and she is doing her best to try to both help him and help her. Like this is the first time that she has been useful, in my opinion. there's there's no other way for me to put it. So seeing Subaru go from taking a while to get started to just instantly being good to go and good to start fixing shit and immediately being useful from the get-go, like they're both of their what word did I use earlier, their growth, yes. Both of their growth is just amazing. And speaking of growth, my favorite character for this arc is Garfield. And I said this before already, but how I don't remember exactly how they handled his issues. So I know in the light novel there's a little bit, or in the web novel there's a little bit of a change with how his fight with Reinhardt went. The anime definitely shortened that way down, but I don't think that's a huge issue. In the web novel, they actually have like a sparring match, and it goes about as well as you would expect. Reinhardt doesn't attack. Garfield tries to land any kind of hit on him whatsoever, and Reinhardt just kind of bats him away. So they shortened it down to where it's basically just the one blow that Garfield threw at him. And I don't think that's a huge issue, actually. I liked it better when there was an actual like sparring match, but I think the overall concept kind of is told well enough with just that one hit. Garfield realizes that he is weak, and that is something that is played out a lot with his story for this arc, especially here at the beginning when he realizes he is both physically weak and mentally weak because he finds his family and he breaks. And I don't remember exactly how this is told in the web novel. It's been a bit. But I like how the anime portrays it with Elsa. I don't remember Elsa being in the web novel, but I she could have been and I just don't remember it. Regardless, I like that the anime went with telling his struggles through her. Because I think it would have been weird if we would have just gotten his thoughts on the matter. So overall, great storytelling with that, and I'm really looking forward to his fights here in the next part of the season. There is a part of Anastasia's story which I think may have been skipped, but I'm not sure. The more I think about it, the less sure I am, actually, because it is something that they could put in the next part of season 3. So I don't want to talk about it too much because that's something that I think I don't want to spoil on. But hopefully they put it in because that is something that is very important to her story after this season. And another thing that they cut that I am not surprised about, but I'm still a little sad about, is Al's backstory. We got his backstory in the novels during the third arc. And then in this arc, they kind of mentioned it again. Like, it's not anything they talk about a whole lot, but they just kind of recall, like, hey, you remember this part of his backstory. And the anime cut it once again. And I think what the anime is doing, I don't know if they're doing it on purpose, but definitely what they are doing is they are making Al more mysterious. Like he's mysterious in every version, but he is less mysterious in the novels because we know more of his backstory. And it kind of feels to me like the anime wants you to be suspicious of Al, which, it's fine. I'm interested in seeing how they do his fight for the next part because that's going to be some huge intel for non-novel readers. I have a feeling that they are not going to show much, but I don't know. We'll see. Ugh, I can already feel my voice starting to tank. I have so much more that I could say on this. I'm going to have to cut it short, though, unfortunately. I could separate it out to multiple days, but I'll save most of my thoughts on this for whenever I do my review. Okay, last thought I'm going to give on this is Subaru's and Julius's relationship. I've talked a whole lot about this in the third arc whenever they were going through their ups and downs. And I feel like this is more turning the knife for Julius. Like Subaru turning the knife and Julius is what I mean. Because when he shows up, Subaru shows up, I don't think they've seen each other since Subaru has been fully knighted. So when they left, Subaru had already proved that he was like absolutely great at dealing with those big problems. And then after they parted, Subaru then dealt with another witch beast on his own. Well, not on his own, but he was a part of another witch beast being defeated. And then he became a knight. And then he was a spirit knight, which Julius was the only one up until that point. So it's like Subaru has been kind of following in his footsteps while also one-upping him at every step. Because one thing that whenever Beatrice shows up, whenever all of them show up, Julius notices Beatrice because she is what is equivalent. She is a great spirit, basically, and Julius notices this. His spirits are strong, but I don't even think they're full spirits. I think they're like quasi spirits at this point. And even with his 6 different quasi spirits, they're nowhere near the level of Beatrice. So he like bows to her and everything to give her respect for who she is, and rightfully so. But this is kind of one more thing. Oh, Subaru managed to get a great spirit on his side that is now better than his spirits. Now, Julius is still like a knight where he can fight with a sword really well in conjunction with his spirits. So it's not like he's weaker than Subaru now or anything. It's more of just, like I said, one-upping him at every step. And it's shown even more whenever he goes to make the speech. The big speech that he makes to the entire town, they give the opportunity. Actually, I think Subaru wants him to Julius to give the speech because he feels like, oh, this is the finest knight. Surely he would be the best person. And Julius declines. So I don't know exactly why, or I don't remember why. I'm sure there is a reason why. I just don't remember it off the top of my head. I'll figure it out later. But he then goes and gives a speech that pretty much saves the townspeople from their despair. And it's always just, it's another thing that Subaru is able to do that Julius can't. Speaking of that, back when they had their little dinner and Reinhardt's dad, why am I blanking on his name right now? Any other time I could remember his name. I'm so bad with names. When Reinhardt's dad shows up and spoils the whole party, and Subaru basically gets mad and defends Reinhardt and Wilhelm, Julius then comes and thanks him for that later because it's something that he wanted to do but can't. It's another thing that Subaru is able to one up him on. Now, granted, that is probably on the slightly lower end compared to everything else, in my opinion. But to Julius, it's not. To Julius, it is once again just something that he sees a fault in himself, that he can't defend his friend. So I don't think this is something that Subaru is ever going to rub in his face as much as he could. I mean, they're still like frenemies kind of thing. So he probably will shit talk him a lot more. My point for all of this is to say that I just love this dynamic of the finest knight basically being shown up by a random nobody. And this is something that's going to actually play out even more as the story goes on, especially in this arc and the next arc. So I am going to keep talking about this, I guess, whenever those come up. Anyway, I this was a great first part of the season. I think White Fox is doing amazing, and I always knew that they would do amazing with this part of the story. This was never in question. I think they've done a great job with the story overall, and my only real issue is going to be the next part, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I could talk about this all day. Unfortunately, my voice does not want me to talk about this all day, so I'm gonna go ahead and end things here. Past me forgot to record an outro, so fuck that guy. Anyway, that's all the anime that I watched for this season. So I feel like I didn't really watch all that many, but I guess it was pretty close to what I normally watch. I don't know. Let me know if I missed any that I should have watched. So that's it. See ya.